Hello, my name is Chris Shasi, and today we're going to evaluate the MDM platform Kandji, or is it Kandji? I'll let you decide. If you don't know us, my name is Chris Shasi, and I am the owner and founder at Rocketman. We work with large enterprises, biotech companies, fast-growing tech companies, universities, and really anyone looking to get the most out of their Jamf Pro servers. We're going to take a tour of Kandji first, and then we're going to talk about what we like about it, what we don't like about it, and then kind of our takeaways overall as this product. So right now I'm actually logged into the Kandji server. Let's just take a quick look around the interface. So first of all, on the left side here, I've got devices, I've got blueprints, I've got library, I've got users, activities, and alerts. I can also add devices, integrations, and settings. So if I take a look at devices here, you can do a search for devices, you can pull up the device, you can also download the devices here, or you can filter based on any of these different filters to create essentially some type of report. If I pull up a device, you're able to see right away any alerts that you might have. You can assign a user or an asset tag. It shows you what blueprints are part of. It shows you an activity log here of everything that's happening. Details, you can add notes in here if you want to. And it shows what applications are on the computer. So let's take a look at blueprints. Now, blueprints, this may be very familiar with you if you're using Apple Configurator or if you use Apple Business Essentials. Apple really has adopted this blueprint mentality. And essentially what you do is you set up a blueprint for each different workflow you want. And that blueprint is going to have all the same applications, all the same settings, all the same configurations for everyone in that blueprint. So if we take a look inside this one, I've set up a pre-stage. I've set up what is called liftoff, which is similar to like a splash buddy window. The apps that are being installed, the bookmarks, the custom apps, the custom scripts, and the configuration profiles. If we go to library, this is where we're really doing most of the heavy lifting on the platform. So let me go to add new and just kind of show quickly what's available here. So first off, we can create any of these custom type things. So like a custom package, a custom script, a custom configuration profile, or a printer. We also have enrollment customizations that we can set up. So this is basically like a pre-stage in Jamf. Like I said, this is like a splash buddy window, and the passport is similar to Jamf Connect. Here are all the apps that you can use that will install and update automatically. Here's the different operating systems that you can deploy to the devices. And here are all the configuration profiles you can deploy to the devices. So user data will be here. Right now, I haven't assigned any users to devices, but if I were to assign them, they would show up here. I also don't have an identity provider integrated. So you're not able to see any of the users without devices because it's not pulling that data from anywhere. Here's an overall activity log that you can see, basically a change management log, and then any alerts for your devices. All right, let's take a look down here. We can add a device. So if you wanted to add a device to your portal, it would give you this enrollment link. Obviously, you can also do it through Apple Business Manager or Apple School Manager if you're doing it that way. We've got some integrations that we can add. If I go to Discover Integrations, so what we have here is we can do like a single sign-on integration. They have one for Azure AD and Google Workspace. If you're not using either of those two, you can use a skim profile. I think I pronounced that right. But basically, it's just a custom profile to be able to add it to like Okta or something like that. They've also got these communication integrations. So you can use like Microsoft Teams or Slack as a way to send messages to that platform. Basically, just sending the alerts that you're getting here to another platform, so you don't have to log into Kandji. Settings, your company name, there's the Apple integrations, which is really important with Apple Business Manager. You got the self-service that you can configure here. Also the access to the platform. And then the API tokens as well for this platform. Let's talk a bit more about what we like about the platform. So like right out of the gate, I think it's easy to tell this looks really nice and really flashy. Like every part of this looks visually appealing. It looks pretty easy. It doesn't look too overwhelming. Another thing you may have noticed as I was going through the library items, it has this onboarding screens built into Kandji. So this is pretty nice as well, because this is something you normally would have to set up custom within Jamf. Let's take a look at it to see what we can do here. So we can go ahead and upload a logo. We can say whether it's a full screen or just a window that you can drag around. It lets you customize what this platform looks like a little bit. And like I said, this is very similar to something like Splash Buddy, where it just brings you through everything in the blueprint in this case, or the provisioning workflow. Another thing I'll say that's kind of cool is it automatically reissues the file vault recovery keys if the recovery keys are broken. So in Jamf, you can deploy a profile to enable file vault, but you can't reissue the file vault recovery keys without a custom script. So this does that automatically, which is a little bit slick. The notifications for Slack and Microsoft Teams, again, you can do that through Jamf, through webhooks, but here it's baked in. If we take a look at the API documentation is pretty good. And a lot of the stuff they're doing through API calls is really nice. It's a bit more modern. And if we look at the API documentation, it's really nice. It's really easy to read. I like how this is all laid out. And that kind of comes down to it when we're looking at Kandji. It's easy, it's readable, it's nice to look at. And those are kind of the main benefits we see in this product. I think this could be best summed up as some of the limitations of the platform. And I mean, you can see this right from the get-go. We went through all of these screens in this GUI, but there's not really that much more to look at. Let's take a look at Jamf Pro though. So this is our test instance of Jamf Pro. If I just go to settings, these are all the things that are available to me. I'm just gonna keep scrolling here, keep scrolling. And this is just the setting. I can't even talk through all this, or this video is going to be way too long. Let's go over to computers. You know, I've got search volume content, got licensed software, got policies, got configuration profiles, I got restricted software, I got Mac apps, got patch management, ebooks, smart computer groups, static computer groups, classes, enrollment invitations, pre-stage enrollments. And that's just in computers. I'm not even going to go through mobile devices and users. There's so much more available in Jamf Pro to be able to do, which we'll kind of get into, than there is on this platform, where there's just not as much there. I don't think Kandji has some type of silver bullet where they're able to just make this platform so much more simpler than Jamf without compromising one of Jamf's most powerful features, its customizability. If we take a look at the API documentation, we're going to see a little bit more of the same. So this looks really cool, but one of the big things, if I just twirl all this down so we can see everything at once, one of the main things me and Chad first noticed when looking at this is just a giant lack of both post and patch commands, which are similar to post and update commands on the Jamf API. Most of the commands you can do here are just Git commands, and there's just not that many of them. Basically, if I twirl down every one of these things, this is what I'm comparing it to, right? Because each one of these API commands has all these different types of git, delete, post, and put commands that I can do. Almost everything does. And I didn't even count how many commands I could do through Jamf Pro, but I estimate this is thousands of commands that I can do just through the classic API. Through the production API, I can do even more. Look at all this. So there's just so many choices to be able to set up the workflow exactly how you want to with Jamf's API. While Kandji's API, although much easier to use, is much more limited in the scope of what we can create. So that's like, in summary, what we don't personally like about this platform is some of the limitations. Let me get into that more. So one thing I'll say is, if we go to the devices view, there's not a way to set up any type of advanced report. So in Jamf Pro, we go over here, we can create an advanced search based on a number of criteria. If I go to show advanced criteria, you'll see here how much criteria we can use for search. We can also add multiple criteria, and the possibilities are just endless for the type of report we can create. Also, if we go to this reports area, if I was to save this search, we can actually configure an email report to automatically go out to the users. We can choose what's displayed in this report, which is also a lot more options. So there's just so much more that we have available when creating an advanced report. The only thing that would be similar is like this filter. In essence, it's kind of like an advanced search, and you can add multiple filters, but this is all the criteria I have. There's like 10 of them, where in Jamf, we have hundreds. We're very limited by what we can do here. You can also change what is being displayed here, but you're also much more limited. There's not nearly as many criteria as we have here when setting this up in Jamf Pro. So that's the reporting inside of here. Let's go to blueprints. So Jamf Pro works much different than the whole blueprints model. Blueprints model is much easier to build. It's much easier to look at, but it's much more limited in scope. Because let's say I set up my default blueprint for everyone, and I had a restriction in place, maybe to lock the screen after 20 minutes. But there's certain users, for one reason or another, that don't want to have that restriction. And maybe we want to up that to 60 minutes. So now what we have to do is set up a whole separate blueprint just for those users and start putting people into that blueprint. If we keep doing that type of system over a lot of different devices for a lot of different groups, now we have an unmanageable amount of blueprints. And once we change the template blueprint, the default one, it's not going to change all the child ones, right? What Jamf allows you to do is, essentially you set up a ton of different policies and configuration profiles. But with that, since you set up all those independently, you can remove them from single devices if you need to for any reason. So you can set up a lot of complex workflows. So instead of one blueprint that kind of rules all the devices, you essentially have set up an individualized workflow for each of your devices based on a number of factors. When I say it like that, it sounds incredibly complicated, and it is, but it gives us the flexibility we need to manage some of these complex environments. Oh, one other thing I really want to point out here. Let's go to create a blueprint. So they have these different template blueprints, which is pretty cool. It'd be cool if you could make a template, but you can't. And they have these CIS level 1 and level 2 scored ones. I want to talk about this because I thought this was really interesting. Jamf has Jamf Protect, and Jamf Protect kind of does the whole CIS auditing. So I wanted to see what this looked like. Now, when I actually drilled down into this and saw what it was doing, I saw that it wasn't doing quite as much as you think it would be based on the fact that it's doing the CIS quote unquote level 1 benchmarks. So, and we've set these up for clients. It's a little bit of it's a bit of work to get them set up. What Kandji's doing is it's just setting up the CIS benchmarks that they can do through configuration profiles. It's not setting up any of the CIS benchmarks that it has to do through a script or any other means. Because of that, it's really only covering 31% of the CIS level 1 benchmarks and 19% of the CIS level 2 benchmarks. We also noticed when I was going through all these that there was a lot of them that it was, I think this might be an accident, but it was enabling that wasn't even part of it. And some of them are actually security downgrades, like it was disabling rapid security response removal. And more importantly, it's disabling the rapid security response installation. I was also disallowing erase all contents and settings, which I'm not sure why I would do, and then disallowing universal control. But none of these are actually part of the level 1 CIS benchmarks. But anyway, I thought that was a little bit misleading and wanted to point that out. Now let's take a look at the library items. So there's a lot of really flashy things here that are very attractive. I want to point out the first one to be this lift off screen. It's a customized onboarding screen. So you select which blueprint you want. You can select an enrollment trigger. So either it's just automated in device enrollment or manual enrollment. Logo, window size, an exit password if you want. And then they can also do it by typing this key combination to get out of it. If I go to customize the screen, I can customize the header and the subheading. There's also another screen I can customize here. And then I can customize the complete screen and add some more links here, which is kind of nice. But the thing I can't do is I can't control when any of these are installed. That's like one of my big things. You grab an application, it's going to install in whatever order it installs. You create a script, it's going to install in whatever order it installs. I can't change that order. I can't change what happens between these different items getting installed. And there's no way to set up what would look like a policy where you can actually have multiple things happening inside the same policy. There is a lack of customizability on this screen. And I specifically pointed out Splash Buddy as being what this is similar to, because it's very similar to Splash Buddy. But there's a reason we use dep notify instead of Splash Buddy. And it's because dep notify allows us to control the provisioning process a bit more than Splash Buddy, which basically just shows you what's already happening in that provisioning process. And we like that ability to do that. So we can display videos inside of the dep notify window if we need to. We can display different instructions at different points in time if we need to. And getting back to the policy things, we can also really control when things are happening and in what order they happen in. Whereas with this, there's really no way to do that. When I create a blueprint, it's going to install in this order here. But there's no way to set up dependencies. And I think that's a really important thing to explain. Now, when I was talking to the Kandji reps, they did point out that when you create a custom app, you have some things you're able to do. So we can do a pre-install script that we add here, and we can add a post-install script. So that does help for a lot of my installs where I do have to do both of those things, oftentimes a pre-install and a post-install script to get things to work. However, some of the packages that I deploy, I also need to cache on the computer first and then run it as a cached package. Why do I have to do that? Typically because, like for Cisco AnyConnect, I need to deploy a choices XML and then run the package based on that choices XML. Not really a way to do that here. However, I may be able to package a package, throw it in there and make that work. So there's workarounds. Yeah, it's a little bit more cumbersome. It's a little bit more weird, and it's not as easy as things are in Jamf. I will note here too, you can do an audit and enforce. And so this audit will allow you to check to see if the install worked properly and then enforce it if it didn't. Which brings me up to another limitation of why we kind of need this. And that limitation is there are no smart computer groups here. There are no smart groups at all within Kandji. So where we would normally, if we wanted to enforce this within Jamf, create a smart group to make sure that that application is on the device. Instead, we set up an audit script, which is another way of doing things. But there are a lot of limitations when it comes to not being able to have smart computer groups. So going through some of these library items a bit more, what can we do? Well, we can add custom apps like I was showing. We can create a custom profile, which is similar to you just upload a mobile config file, and we can do a custom script as well, which is just the same as being able to add any type of shell script here to the workflow. Now, we don't have smart groups, but I do want to point out something we do have, and that is rules. So we can use one of these rules to say, hey, let's say Mac family is one of iMac. So we only want to deploy this to my iMacs. That's great. We can also add multiple rules. What can't we do though? Well, we can't do anything more than these 7 criteria. And then also, if we had an identity provider integrated, we could do these 3 as well. User department, user job title, user group. Pales into comparison with the hundreds of operators we can use within a smart group within Jamf Pro. So you can do some stuff for assignment rules, really can't do that much. Mostly what we're doing is taking one blueprint and using it for everything. Another limitation that I'll say is they don't have any type of extension attributes. So if you wanted to run a script on the computer that would take inventory of something that you needed, one example we have is we just created a script that figure out which country the device is in based on its external IP address. We do that through an extension attribute, and then that'll throw that into the inventory in Jamf. So, however, when I talked to the Kandji reps, there is kind of a way to do that. I go to devices here. I click on my device and I go to notes. I can update this note via the API. So if I deploy a script to the device that runs an API call, it can change this note. In this example, I did the backdoor admin password, but I could also make this country by IP address or just country. Probably make more sense. Now, these don't actually have names. You're just using the ID to update it. So this will just be United States, and this will just be the actual backdoor admin password. So you can kind of do it, but you can't really create reports on this node. So if you wanted to create a report of where the devices are, that would be impossible. You can only create reports off of the actual filters that are in here. If you wanted to do that, you'd have to use the API to then create a report. So kind of what we're seeing across the board is that if you're trying to do something simple, Kandji is pretty great at doing that. If you want to customize it at all, there are some ways to do that, but it ends up making the platform actually a lot more difficult to use and a lot more cumbersome than if you were to just do it in something like Jamf Pro. And there's certain things that when it comes down to it are going to just be impossible to do. So for instance, our temporary admin account has a workflow that the user will go into self-service, they'll run the script to make them a temporary admin. And then after they run it that one time, it takes them out of that group so that they can't run it again. So they need to get permission from IT via a static group. That, from everything I can tell, would be completely impossible inside of Kandji because it doesn't have like a static group to do it. I guess maybe you could use a blueprint and have like a separate blueprint that you're putting them into. So yeah, if you think about it enough, there's some way to do it with the API, but you're just using custom scripting a lot. We deploy, most of our clients have 10 to 20 extension attributes. And that means we'd have to have 10 to 20 scripts with API calls that are running on all those computers. So let's get to some of our takeaways here. So in summary, what was good? It's very simple, intuitive, and easy to use. What's bad about it? If you're trying to do something a little bit different than what it's built to do, it either is incredibly cumbersome or going to be impossible to do in the way you want to do it. It doesn't have extension attributes. It doesn't have smart groups. It doesn't have the same capabilities of the API. And this I didn't mention before, it doesn't also have the same capabilities that the Jamf agent has. These are things that we use regularly across all of our clients. So a lot of the workflows that we use and set up within Rocketman would not work at all within Kandji. In conclusion, I'd say, should you use Kandji? It kind of depends on the size of your IT team, the complexity of your environment, and also how many devices you had. When I was talking to the Kandji rep, they did say they were looking at like what they would call a mid-sized business, which is 50 to 1,000 devices. I would say that the 1,000, based on what I see here, is a little high for what they're looking for. I can see 50 to maybe 100 or 150 devices, maybe up to like 200 being a decent threshold for this. We have plenty of clients that we're managing that are like 200 devices that I think is just a bit too much for this workflow. And if you're outgrowing past, typically if you're getting past 100, you're looking forward at growing past 200, 500, or even 1,000. Like typically companies aren't like, yep, we're going to stick at 150 and we're not going to go past that. I think it's kind of a hard platform to sell to a lot of clients that are really starting to grow at all. Another thing too is I think this is actually a great platform for people under 50 devices. However, they have a minimum device count of 50 devices. Similar to Jamf Pro, Jamf Pro also has a minimum device count of 50 devices. I think that makes sense because honestly, unless you are a large enterprise company, you can probably afford the extra licenses and you're only trying to manage 20 max, it does not make sense to have Jamf Pro if you only have 20 employees. You don't need Jamf Pro. This would be a great platform for you, but you need to buy 50 licenses. So that's a little bit difficult. So in that case, although I do think this platform is better than Jamf Now, Jamf Now might be a better choice for you just because of the price difference between getting 50 devices or being able to just manage your 10 or 20 devices that you currently have. So that's our takeaway on the Kandji platform. Thank you for listening. Have a great and awesome day.